Welcome back to the SBK Betting Podcast, a brief hiatus in between proceedings with the Cheltenham Festival taking centre stage last week. It was a sublime week. I'm still just about recovering from last Friday. I'm sure many of members of this podcast too. I'm really pleased that I've got the full team back in action. Not least, I'm going to start with Tom Collins, who threatened to buy everyone in the Guinness Village a Guinness should Vauban win the Triumph. So I'm sure that was the highlight of your week. Are you still recovering? 3 out of 4 naps landed. How are you doing?
Yeah, well, as you can tell, my voice is a little bit hoarse. That's a good pun, isn't it? After the Cheltenham Festival, Vauban, yeah, definitely the highlight in the Triumph. I had a really bad Thursday. Anyone watching the daily podcasts with me and Ross would have realised that after Thursday, I was in a pretty bad way, Jess. But Friday saved us. Vauban got off to a great start. A Plus Tard won the Gold Cup. I thought the ride on Billaway from Patrick Mullins was phenomenal as well. A really good end to the 2022 Cheltenham Festival. Looking forward to 2023 now.
I know I've seen so much of that. I nearly thought that we could do a little anti-post preview podcast, so much so that everyone's talking about it, but absolutely not. This podcast will wait until next year when it's actually 2023. But I'm delighted you had a great week. Another man, great Friday at least. A man who had a brilliant week overall was James Millman. Hats off to you. 4 out of 4 naps landed from the Cheltenham Preview podcast. 9 overall winners, including A Plus Tard, L'Empress, Facile Vega, to name a few. I'm sure you're delighted how the week went for you, James.
Yeah, I kept it mostly the short price ones. I didn't have any big price options in the handicaps. Oscar Elite, he ran well. I wish he'd gone for the Kim Muir, but he finished third in the Ultimate. But yeah, the shorties that I hope would come in, apart from Tiger Roll, which was a little bit heartbreaking to see, the rest of them basically did the job. So it was a great Cheltenham. I think it's getting easier in the fact that the smaller fields mean there's less shocks as such in the main races, because the field numbers that you divide into easier options if you can't win the main event. So it did mean that lots of single figure price horses won rather than some of the bigger outsiders perhaps in recent years. But it was still an enjoyable festival. I just hope that somebody does catch up with Willie Mullins, because it's Willie Mullins 10, the rest struggling a little bit. So hopefully this time next year, someone else is just stopping Willie from cleaning up a little bit at the festival. That was the only slight negative for me.
Yeah, we definitely did a lot better than Tom Collins thought we were going to do anyway. And the handicaps, there was some results that played in our favour, and I think the handicapper in reflection did quite a good job. A lot of drama with the ground and various aspects, but it was a great festival all in all. Ross Miller, come to you. I just want to say what a fetching jumper you have on. I've actually joined you. We must good minds think alike. I don't know why you've decided to wear that. Something to do with Willie Mullins stopping the show up from, or was it something to do with Nicky Henderson?
I think I may have suggested on more than one occasion to you, Jess, that your lucrative anti-post position on Constitution Hill for the Supreme was wasted because he wouldn't win the Supreme because he'd go to the Ballymore. And you suggested that maybe I wore one of my fetching roll necks without sleeves, if I was wrong. And then somewhere along the line, a Richie rat tail got thrown into the mix. So here we are. And he was a very impressive winner. Well done to you. He would have won the Ballymore and John Bond would have won the Supreme. So maybe Nicky missed a trick. But true to my word, here I am, looking like a clown ready to go for the flat.
Good man. I know. Well, hats off to you for sticking to your word. Constitution Hill, definitely the stand-up performance from the week, from my position, and what a super horse. And I just love to hope that we might have a battle with Honeysuckle. She's only got 1 season left, as it seems. But yeah, what a week. I was delighted to see Court Rambler and a couple of other good price horses come through. But that is Cheltenham, done and dusted. And although we still have Aintree, Punchestown and likes to enjoy for the National Hunt fans, this weekend marks the return of the turf flat season. And to celebrate SBK's first flat sponsorship, all at Doncaster, all 7 races sponsored by SBK, including the feature Lincoln Handicap. And well, we know what happened when SBK last sponsored a race. The outcome was the race of a generation in the Clarence House Chase. So let's just say SBK have a good way of picking them. So let's get into it, because there's plenty to get previewing, full on flat mode. And we're going to cover 3 races from Doncaster. Well, the first one is going to be the 150, the SBK Cammidge Trophy. It's a 6 furlong listed race. And I'll just quickly go through the betting. Garris is a 2-1 favourite. Diligent Harry 11-4. Belster 15-2. Mo Salita 12-1. 14-1. Mondamage 14, 16 volatile analyst, and just another bottle completes the field at 33-1. Not a big field, and some of these field sizes are smaller than I'd hoped. Imagine it'd be quicker ground. I'll come to TC to you first. You probably had a good look at this. Delighted to have the flat turf season back starting. Despite only 7 runners, a good field. I thought Belisa had a good season last year, smashing win of the Air Gold Cup. But there could be some horses that are going to come into themselves as sprinters this season that are going to hope to start off their season in a good respect.
Yeah, I can't wait for the return of the turf flat season. I've been waiting for this for about 6 months, so I'm really excited to be heading up to Doncaster actually on Saturday. We are doing a race preview, a meeting preview before racing starts as well, which will be phenomenal. And then we'll get stuck into these main races. Now, this is a good race. As you say, it lacks strength and depth, but I tend to think that these kind of events go towards ahead of the market anyway. Charlie Hills has run his best 6 furlong horse in this race for the last 2 runnings. 2019, he ran Equilateral in this race. 2021, he ran Royal Commando, who actually won this event. This year, Charlie Hills is represented by Garris, who heads the market, as you say. I think he's going to record another victory in this race. Garris is a horse who has so much speed, but he was tried over 5 furlongs to start his career, moved to 6, then was last seen running over 7 furlongs. I think the drop back to 6 furlongs would definitely suit. He needs a straight track because he doesn't have too much early zip, so he can often find himself a bit further back than ideal. But this race and the way it's going to develop should really suit him. There's speed in here with just another bottle in the lineup. Mo Salita can go forward as well. I think both of those two will be campaigned with a big field handicap in mind later in the season. There's a couple in here as well that, I mean, very much fit the same bill, the likes of Volatile Analyst, Mondamage as well. So I think this race probably revolves around the 2 at the top of the market, Garris and Diligent Harry. I know all 3 of you aren't in agreement with me and have gone for the other option in here, but I really love Garris in this position. I think he's the horse to beat and I think he'll win.
Yeah, well, the betting's seeming that. I do know before we started this podcast what Ross and James are favouring, and I'm in agreement with the 2. I'll come to James to you first because I believe there's a horse in this race that could turn into a proper sprinter. I'm looking at the ground and I see it's good to soft. I think it could get quicker with this beautiful sunshine at the moment, but Diligent Harry for Clive Cox, he could be one of those.
Yeah, definitely. Garris is currently the better of the pair, but he's had a lot of racing. He's 6-year-old. He's a Group 3 horse at best, I think, is Garris. Whereas Diligent Harry, last year was kind of a bit of a strange season for him because he came good in the weather in the winter. Now he got beat. So he won it on finals day. And then it's hard to give a horse a break, bring him back for the summer. He ran 3rd at Newcastle on near weather. Good second, Happy Romance at Newbury in July. Then he came back. I think Clive didn't particularly want to run him in October, but it was soft ground, give him a go, and he didn't handle it patently. I think Clive knew that before he ran. He's been pulled out on ground that was too soft a few times, and he's going to be back, hopefully, on a sounder surface. I'd imagine, I agree with you. Now it's good to soft, but the way the weather's been, it's been drying out a little bit too much, really, considering we are at the start of the flat season, but I think it'll be good ground. Doncaster, it drains pretty well. Horses that do well in near weather tend to transfer their form to Doncaster. So I think there's loads in his favour in that regard. And Clive Cox is just fantastic with his sprinters in particular. And like I said, that convoluted season last year, because he had the weather winter campaign, meant no proper break. Whereas after October, we had a couple of months out. He's come back, you'd imagine, fit and well. And I think he could be the type to improve past. Beaza could be interesting in the fact that he looked quite good, didn't he, when he won the Air Gold Cup. Smaller field, I think, will be in his favour. He's inconsistent. He might pop up, but I think the value started to go as we nibbled out a little bit in the run-up to this race. But I do think that Diligent Harry is the one horse that could be a standout sprinter this campaign.
Yeah, I couldn't believe his price at 11-4. Thought it would be shorter than that. But as you say, Gareth is on ratings the better horse, and he does have the genuine group form. Ross, your thoughts with this horse? I thought it's interesting to see how this race might pan out. I know Mo Salita likes to go on. She's pretty quick, which could play into Diligent Harry's strengths because he's quite a free goer. I'd love to see him with cover in a bigger field race one day, but this is a really good starting point for him.
I completely agree with what TC and James have said. It certainly looks between the top two in the market. Bielsa probably isn't up to this grade. He's been found in wanting in listing in Group 3 class before. Gareth, I can see the angle, but the fact of the matter is that Diligent Harry's only had 2 runs on turf. One of those came on soft ground, as James said, which certainly wouldn't have suited. He's a 4-year-old. He's got potentially bags of improvement in him. And I just thought at the prices, he was a bigger price than Gareth, and that's the way I went. I wouldn't have a huge amount between them, and I just thought 4-year-old coming in early in the season, as James said, Clive Cox does very well with his sprinters in particular. And Charlie Hills I always have him sort of marked as a slightly slow starter to the season. So Diligent Harry for me.
Yeah, I back that. Three against TC for Diligent Harry, but it's one of the two at the top of the market according to where we're sitting. I just think Diligent Harry was pretty good fresh on his first run first start as well last year. And yeah, I think he could be a proper sprinter. So good way to begin. That's 150. We'll head into the 225, the SBK Spring Mile, run over the mile. Is the consolation race for the Lincoln, those that were eliminated at the 48-hour deck stage. And again, we've got a very interesting stall at the top of the market, Empire State of Mind, 7-2 favourite, a horse that I'm really excited to see his form links in very well for one of the lead protagonists in the Lincoln itself, in Mujtaba. 7-2, generally 9-2 Star Shield, 6-1 Boyne Ivy, 13-2, 15-2 Mustawa, and 10-1 Bigger the Rest. We're running over this straight mile. As we said, the ground's drying up. It's as I said, Empire State of the Mind leads the way as he should be based on that really good form with Mujtaba. TC, thoughts with him? Are you with him or are you against him?
I'm against him, but I think he deserves to be favourite, Empire State of Mind. I think he's got stronger claims than General Lee, who's the current second favourite in the race. He shot up the weights last year, shot up the ratings, in fact, because he was just notching victory after victory, runner-up in between his wins. And, he's gone up 20-odd pounds in the weights. Now, he could easily improve again into his 4-year-old season, but he's coming off a long layoff, different kind of conditions. He was last seen on testing ground. I think he deserves to be favourite, but I don't want to be backing him at that kind of price. There's a horse in here that I think is very interesting, which is Mustawa. He ran a screamer in this race last year. He finished third. He was drawn in stall 14 in a much deeper edition of the race than this. And it paid to be drawn against the standside rail that day. He was out towards the middle of the track, and he looked under pressure from a long way out, but he stayed on really powerfully up to the straight mile to the finish line, and he finished third. I thought it was a very good effort. That effort came off a mark of 88. He's dropped 5 pounds in the handicap since. This has probably been the target. He had a pipe opener at Kempton just over a month ago as well, which will see him spot on for this. He'll relish the return to turf. I think he's the value play in here, Mustawa.
He's got Sylvester de Souza on board, who was on board him this time last year as well, and has done well with him in the past. Mustawa for TC. Ross, to you next. Thoughts? I thought possibly Empire State of Mind. Finding Mujtaba too good at Redcar was no bad thing at all. He's bumped into one that day, only raised £1 for that. Very likable, and I just think he's the best horse in this race. Yeah,
I can see your angle, but again, I couldn't take him at the price he's at. And I came down on Mustawa with TC and I'll echo the same reasons. It was definitely a strong. Yeah. Let's hope it's a bit different on the flat than it's been on the jumps. It was definitely a stronger heat last year. This is easier, £5 lower. I'd perhaps be a little more considered about the return run on the all weather. He had a nice run through. He didn't overly impress me, but if that was purely designed just to put him spot on for this, then I think he's got a great chance at the prices. And obviously, Sylvester de Souza freelance this year without his power retained gig, so he will be. I mean, he's always a man that will give you a run for your money, but never more so than this season. You'd imagine at the start of the season, reminding everyone that he's out there and available. So Heather Main is a small time trainer, but she does very well with a small string. At the price, I thought he was a value play.
Okay, well, the Roscoe double is starting afresh for the flat season. James, I've tried TC, I've tried Ross. Do you think that I'm barking up the wrong tree with Empire State of Mind?
No, I'm in your camp here with this one, because what's disappointing though is that there is only 9 taking part in this race. Normally always feels it's normally won by very much a progressive 4-year-old that didn't quite sneak into the main race, whereas this year it's very, very different. You've only really got 2 of those 4-year-olds, Generally and Empire State of Mind, and I think the ground's probably crucial. Generally, his last 2 wins both came on good to firm ground. In between on heavy, he was a little bit below par at Windsor. So while the ground's drying out all the time, it's probably not going to be good to firm. It'd be good. And Empire State of Mind, you've got no worries with the ground whatsoever with him. He won on soft, won in good ground. He finally found his stride last season. He looks relatively uncomplicated now. The blinkers have gone on. And I just felt he was the type that would keep on progressing again. I respect what the lads say, because it was a much stronger race last year. But a little bit like Ross, last year he went into the race of 101-day layoff. This year he had that run at Kempton, and it wasn't a brilliant effort considering he was well handicapped in that race, like he is on Saturday. So I think he's probably second in for me. I'm not a massive General Lee fan, but I'm going to stick with you, Empire State of Mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think Empire State of Mind, Diligent Harry doubles looking quite nice. These two, I'm really keen on both of them. A quick shout out for May 9th. Andrew Balding's made a very strong start to the year. This horse can be a bit frustrating, but it's gone up in the handicap over the winter. It'll just be interesting to see his level now back on the turf. And again, he might be one that might be better suited by a stronger pace and a bigger field handicap, and the cheap pieces on for the first time. So I'm not put off this horse at an each way price at 10-1 is all right for me. So differing of opinions for the Doncaster Mile. We'll head into the big one at 3:35. This is the Lincoln. And this race has been looking really hot, as it has done for the last couple of years. And it's a big opportunity as well for some young up-and-coming apprentice jockeys. Their claims being a massive help in a big handicap like this, with some classy sorts wanting to get a few extra pounds with high rating. And we've, over the years, it's been the classic case of a group horse in a handicap ahead of that handicap mark. The Lincoln of 2018, a day beating Lord Glitters, that was some race. And the likes of Not So Sleepy, Big Country, Gabriel, they were all in that race. So we could have anything here. TC, start with you first. I'd like to start with Modern News, if it's all right, because I'll get your selection, but just your thoughts on this horse, because he's been the talking horse with Charlie Appleby and Godolphin, who've won this with twice in the last few years. And he's been the hype horse because of the jockey, Harry Davies, taking £7 off. A big ask for a young guy who's only had 30-odd rides and 6 winners. But that he could really fit into that criteria of this so-called group horse in a handicap.
Yeah, exactly. 4-year-olds have won the last 5 editions of the Lincoln. Harry Davis has really impressed over the winter. In our flat guide that we're giving away at Doncaster on Saturday, I wrote a piece about 3 up-and-coming jockeys, and he featured in there. I think he's a jockey with a bright future, and the fact that Godolphin are using him already in his career just suggests that. The fact he's on Modern News is a great opportunity for him. This horse has already won at Doncaster before. He's drawn well in gate 8 as well. I kind of looked for a middle to high draw, which put me off Mushtaba and Salim, I have to say, who were drawn in stalls 2 and 3 respectively. But yeah, I think the fact that they're all drawn low completely changes the complexion of this race, Jess.
Very interesting. It's a race that can, but getting the right run of the race is really important. I'll get your section in a bit, but just get your thoughts, James, on the opportunity. Being a jockey yourself, knowing what it's like for these young jockeys, pressure on their backs, and if you look at the top in the market, Ross Coakley, Harry Davies, Adam Farragher, huge opportunities, and but it's also a big ask and puts a lot of weight on these young guys' shoulders.
Yeah, most definitely. I was never good enough to get that kind of pressure, but it is a lot. What fascinated me was Harry actually, I think on about his 10th ride, had a ride for Godolphin in a maiden, a horse called Tranquil Night, and watching him get on the start, it was a little bit on the keen side. And I was thinking from a wide draw, this one might just take off. Yet he popped him out, got him settled, switched him in behind cover, and then produced him to win very, very easily. And that was a ride of someone that's very much confident in their abilities. Clearly a talented young rider. We saw it last year with Benny de la Sayette, first ride on turf, winning the Lincoln last year. And I think he's very, very good. Against that, I'm going to oppose him with the other good claimer, Adam Farrago. He's got all that experience in the bag riding in Ireland. It's very tough for an apprentice over in Ireland because A, there's a lot fewer opportunities, and B, the top yards dominate more than what they do over in the UK, whereas you've got 3 meetings a day. You can ride plenty of winners at the minor meetings. They don't really exist Dundalk aside over in Ireland. So he gained a lot of experience, but not a lot of winners. He came over to William Haggis's yard last year. I thought he gelled pretty well. And the fact that William's putting it up on Mujabar, it shows you the respect and the faith that William has in him as a rider. And probably he's reacting to Harry Davis taking off Southern on Modern News, because I think Harry probably rides as well as most £3 claimers now. So you've kind of got a £3-4 at least. And Adam, he's going to be down to his free quite shortly. He's ridden a lot of winners already. And I think he's probably worth about the £4 as well in hand. So 2 very good riders. And Ross Coakley actually rides a lot for us. We used him most of the last season. He was only really riding for us. Unfortunately, he's had a good winter. So he's been picked up by the bigger yards. And Simon Christopher's a team he's certainly got a good association with now. I think had 3 winners from about 5 rides. And it's a nice ride for him to pick up. I was a little bit unsure what that horse has achieved, Salem, in the fact that it was a 7-length novice at Cheltenham in November. He won, having been set for a mark in the mid-70s. And then it was quite a weak November handicap. He won by 5 lengths at Wolverhampton. So I think the other 2 have achieved a lot more. But Ross is a big ride for him. And he's a jockey. I think most of them aren't always the brightest, whereas I can have a conversation with Ross and he understands what I want him to do. So I think he's a jockey that could go quite far, and it's a big day for him on Saturday. But I think the horse might need to improve a little bit more than the 2 rivals ridden by the apprentices. But it's a cracking Lincoln in the fact that you have these unexposed horses that could well be anything in the contest, and that for me is pretty fascinating. And the 3 riders aren't household names at all, and it's a big day for them.
Yeah, it certainly is. When you've got a jockey which doesn't have a huge amount of big ride race experience, and also horses who aren't that exposed either, who could be anything, coming off the back of the break. Mujtaba is that, but you know, the looking at his profile, he could be just that next type of Adabe. He made some pretty good horses that very ordinary at the back of last season, and the connections are very keen on him. I'll come to you, Ross, and your thoughts on these horses, the sort of hype horses at the head of the market. You know, they clearly are the ones that you kind of look for in a Lincoln over the last few years. These are the type of horses that go and win it. Is there anything that perhaps has got more racecourse experience, has been there, done that, who's got a more experienced jockey on board that you think has probably got a bit of value based on the fact that there's been a lot of talk about these more unexposed types?
Not hugely at the head of the market. I certainly took on board the sort of experience, and Modern News does have twice the number of runs Mujtaba has, and I just thought in a handicap that could be important. But then, you know, that is counterbalanced by Adam Farrow has more experience than Harry Davis. But for me, at the head of the market, I thought Modern News was a sound selection. Further down the market, but again with an inexperienced jockey, Broken Spear for Tony Carroll stayed on really strongly over 7 furlongs at the back end of last year. He had a pipe opener on the all-weather recently, and that very much looked like a pipe opener because he went very wide the whole way round and wasn't given a hard time. Johnny Pete caught my eye. You might remember he made the running on a horse called Gobi Sunset, I think it was, at Newcastle. Made the running, kicked early, and did a really sound job. And I'm always keen to follow jockeys that have the confidence to try something. If it hadn't come off as a £7 apprentice, you're in for a roasting. And he made his move and he made it stick, and he did a very good job. It's gone a bit quiet for him now, but he's clearly a talented lad and a confident lad. And I think in a big handicap, that's not a bad thing to have. He claims 7 still. I thought 66 to 1 is a big price for him with course form if he improves the step up to a mile. He stayed on very strongly over the 7 last time. So for me, it was Modern News, a fairly unoriginal selection, but at a bigger price. Each way places maybe Broken Spear.
Yeah, Johnny Pete was on board Broken Spear when he won at Doncaster in a 22 runner handicap. So that's experience for both jockey and horse, which is obviously very interesting. 60-61. We love a bit of that. TC, I'll come back to you then. You've had your thoughts on these horses at the top of the market. Again, you know, the same sort of question I asked Ross. Does it dent your enthusiasm for a horse with the lack of experience, but you know, the big hype and the opportunity that their trainers are giving them to land a big race like this en route to essentially better things that they hope to achieve this season?
No, the lack of experience doesn't bother me. The draw does. And that's not to say that they're not all going to congregate over towards the far side. I mean, we've seen it before. A couple of horses in the last 10 years have won from gate 3. So it's certainly not a complete disadvantage to be drawn low. However, it was just enough to put me off betting them at the prices. Look, I am fearing the 4-year-olds. I think Modern News, is the one that might come out and win the race. I prefer his draw to Salim and Mujtaba. But I'm going to back 2 at bigger prices, much bigger prices, in fact. The first is Johan. Now, I know he's drawn low, but this is just more a safety play in case those drawn low do dominate. He has an excellent record when fresh. He's moved to Mick Shannon's yards from William Haggis, which I think is quite interesting. Mick Shannon has struck with a couple of handicappers first time up when he's picked them up for small prices from big yards. And this horse has an excellent record when fresh. Finished 5th in the Spring Cup last year on his first start at Newbury. The ground is going to be perfect for him. So is the trip. And he's drawn right next to the 2 market leaders. So if those drawn low do dominate, I think Johan's a player at a big price. The other one that I'm interested in is a horse called Hortzadar, who actually finished 3rd in this race last year. He's probably been targeted at the race again by David O'Mara. But I watched last year's race and I thought, why is this horse finished 3rd? He was 66-1. He looked completely exposed going into the race. He didn't even look well handicapped. And then I watched it and I thought, blimey, like this horse probably could have actually won the race. He was drawn in stall 1. They all congregated towards the stand side and he was out on the wing, down the middle of the track, no cover whatsoever throughout the whole race. Yet he still made his move up to the leaders. He hit the front briefly and finished 3rd behind a very well handicapped horse in Hakiki. I think if he reproduces that effort off a £7 lower mark this year, then he's a major player at a massive price.
Well, they're both 40-1, so big enough. 40s and 66s. They've got some nice each way options. I think, James, there was another one that we might have agreed on in this as well. Rogue Bear, and he's already come in for a little bit of money already since the confirmations come out. He's as big as 33s. I think I've seen 22s around, and he's 28-1 for Tom Clover. He's another trainer who's made a good start to the season.
Yeah, he was one that I imagine Tom was a bit gutted when he saw the decks come through and he sneaked into the Lincoln, because I think he would have liked him into the Spring Mile. But against that, David Egan, 8 stone 3, I think it's a cracking jockey booking, because David's very strong for a lightweight jockey in particular. The horse is on a right progressive profile, goes well in a straight track. He won at Doncaster in April last year, dead heated with Hot Chestnut, who was well treated at the time at Nottingham. I think he's progressive, and I like Tom Clover as a trainer as well. So from the high numbers, with the draw, with so many of the leading contenders in Johan Tom's selection, a front runner, I think he might drag along those that are drawn low. But if the high numbers get involved, he's definitely my one from the high draws. And like you, I think he's an each way price. A lot of people seem to notice, because you say that the price is dropping a bit, and he might well be a bit shorter come Saturday.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Another horse I want to give a nod to is Amethyst. He's 16-1. He's got that sweet spot. He's drawn 13. He ended his season with a very good 3rd in the Cambridgeshire. The run before that, he was the wrong side of the track at York in another big field handicap. So he's got experience in this type of races. He's not yet definitely proven over a mile, but showed at Newmarket he's definitely capable at this trip. He's one that goes well fresh. Kieran Fallon booked. He's got a nice racing weight, 8'10", and I think he's not a bad each way shot as well. So that's what we like. We obviously have a lot of respect for these horses at the top of the market, but there are plenty in there with a good each way option. If those ones at the top have just been overbet a little bit. So plenty to think about ahead of the SBK Lincoln, a cracking renewal, and brilliant that SBK have got the sponsorship at the day on Saturday at Doncaster. Our final race that we're going to preview is at Kempton, where we have the Magnolia Stakes, a listed race for 4-year-olds and up over 1 mile 2 furlongs. Goes off at 2:05. On paper, it's the rerun of the Winter Derby trial, the first 4 reopposing, and Fancy Man for Richard Hannon and Thorhammer Hampton. Heads are betting at 7-4. Felix is the only horse in there that's his big worry. He's 4-1, King of the South 15-2, Father of Jazz 10-1, Al Zarakan 14s with Living Legend. Ross, over to you first. Thoughts on this race, because Fancy Man, clearly a classy 3-year-old last year, ended the season with a great win in a conditions race over 1 mile 4. So he's clearly a stayer. He's quite versatile as well, and he proved himself a good quality of horse. Just bumped into very, very solid horses in Alenquer and Lord North last time.
Yeah, I think he looks like the very obvious favourite, doesn't he? But he has to concede the £3. I couldn't really see that with the couple at the top of the market with him. I couldn't see why that would bother him. At the price, I would just chance Al Zaragan against him in the first time blinkers. He will be able to get forward in this race, I suspect. It's only Living Legend in him that would really want to press forward. He looked to me the last twice at Lingfield, he sulked when he got headed. If the blinkers and Luke Morris can just sort of set a fire to him a little bit, he could just take a bit of passing if they have the desired effect, but it wouldn't be a confident pick. But at 14-1, I thought he was worth chancing at the price.
Yeah, to be honest, I saw him as the likely pace angle. Again, he's been behind Fancy Man in the last 2 starts and gives him a nice toe into the race. TC, thoughts on this? Like at £3, really, you know, we've been doing the jump season and penalties for horses and additional weight. It's not a huge amount for a horse that on rating looks to really be going the right way.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is all about Fancy Man. I expect him to win. 7 of the last 9 favourites of this race have won. It doesn't tend to be the deepest event. In fact, no horse bigger than 4-1 has won in the last decade, which I think is very interesting. Only 2 horses this year fill that criteria. Obviously, Fancy Man being the favourite, and Felix, who I think is a bit of a Lingfield specialist. I can't see past Fancy Man. He was considered a Derby horse last year. He ran in a trial, didn't work out for him. Then he seemed to lose his confidence a little bit. They ran him in an all-weather conditions race to end the season. He was set off a short price favourite. He got the job done. That got his confidence back. Bolted up in a Winter Derby trial on his return. 3rd behind 2 Group 1 horses in the Winter Derby itself in Alenquer and Lord North. He actually beat Alenquer as a juvenile as well at Haydock by 3 1/4 lengths, which just showed his talent. I can't see him being beat here. Fancy Man to win.
Yes, a good opportunity for Thorham Hampton with Sean Levy over in Meydan, his regular partner on Happy Romance, I assume. So yeah, Thor without his claim, starting his year as a pro, it's a big opportunity for him, James. You know, he's been part of the Richard Hannon team for a long time, and to be on horses like this on an ITV race it's going to be, and also with a horse like this, he clearly is quite versatile. You can hold him up, you can lead with him. So how Thor goes out and decides to run his race will be quite interesting.
Yeah, we used Thor as a £7 claimer when he first started, and he rides very well. These are the opportunities that the lads and lasses riding a claim have to take, because you don't get too many of them, and you need to show that your trainers can rely on you to deliver on the big stage. And I think he will do. Fancy Man himself, I know he's actually won twice at Lingfield. I think a more galloping track would see him in a better light. He's a big horse. I think it's been the nature of the opposition that's seen him win at Lingfield. He ran well behind Alenquer and Lord North at Lingfield in the Winter Derby. That was a really strong renewal of that race this year, much stronger than it normally is, bearing in mind the prize money in the UK compared to what they can race for abroad. Felix, he would have been in a Dubai turf, but he didn't get invited this year. And that just shows you he's not quite as good as what he was last year when he finished 3rd in that contest. He was 5th on Super Saturday, I think it was, at Meydan. That was a decent enough effort, but he's 6-year-old now. He does look like he's not quite as good as what he was in his younger days. So for that reason, Fancy Man is a great opportunity for him. And I think he's got an obvious chance of being another winning favourite in this race.
Yeah, look, I've struggled to see against the Pose Fancy Man, but for the sake of not putting up too many favourites this week, I'm just going to give Felix the nod and go against that, just because I think he's a real battle-hardened sort. I think he ran a great race in Meydan in the Jebel Haftar just 2 weeks ago. He's a course consistence winner. He had a good campaign last year. And if that £3 weight pull does help, I might just take Fancy Man on at the prices, but I do that with slight trepidation, because I think they really like Fancy Man, the Richard Hannon team, to start off he's already begun a good season, and they can pick up this is a good opportunity essentially, because he's going to find stronger opposition as the season goes on. But that's the Magnolia Stakes. A good card at Kempton, a good weekend of racing. I know we've got the Dubai World Cup night at Meydan, and we've got, as I said, the rest of the card at Doncaster. But Ross Miller's only about Stratford, because I know that's where his nap and his next best is going to come from, because we still have jumps racing, all your jumps fans. So I'll ask now for Ross Miller's nap and next best.
So my nap doesn't both come from Stratford. In the 218, Daria was a well gambled birthday winner last week for owner trainer David Brace. Won comfortably, was valued for far more than the winning margin, having travelled into it very well and made a mistake at the second last. Has a £6 rise here. I can't see that stopping her. And in the next best is in the 438 Black Calanisi. I think he's been crying out for a bit more of a trip on this better ground. It's £5 low in his last winning mark. Is weighted to reverse course form with Cap or Toy from last October. I think he'll go very close.
Okay, brilliant for all your jump needs. If you've had enough of all the flat chat, we still keep it as a priority. On to you next, James.
Yeah, Empire State of Mind in the Spring Mile was my nap. I thought he was a very progressive 3-year-old last year for the Quinn team. 3 to 4, they've kept hold of him. They must think he's got more improvement. Obviously, he would have gone to sales. And I just think 9 runners is a much weaker race than it normally is the Spring Mile. So I think he's got a great chance. And then I'm going to go for a 3-year-old. I like these 3-year-old handicaps where you see horses reappearing after a winter off, open to loads of improvement. Gangway in the 6 o'clock at Wolverhampton is my choice. And actually, he's a bit more exposed than the normal 3-year-olds that I put up. But I thought it was very interesting. Paul Dean actually originally owned him. They paid 48,000 for him. He went to Horses and Training Sales, and Kingsley Park Syndicates bought him back for just £11,000. He's from a family that improved with age. He's by Glen Eagles. He's been gelded since we last saw him. Nadobi actually came last at 13 in his last run. He only got beat 5 lengths, so he wasn't that far behind. He's dropped £5 since going handicapping, and the fact that they've kept hold of him, I think suggests he'll be well treated in a relatively weak handicap at Wolverhampton at 6 o'clock. So those 3-year-olds, hopefully loads of improvers will be able to find on the podcast throughout the flat season. But that's one just to keep a little eye on at Wolverhampton on Saturday night.
Yeah, racing continues on into the evening. Once you've finished with Doncaster and Kempton and Stratford, where are you looking to see?
Well, I toyed up 4 horses for my nap. I've eventually came down on Gareth just purely on the fact that his record fresh is so good. 3 victories, a third and a second from 5 runs after a break. Top rated in the race. This is 150 at Doncaster. I mean, 3 others could have worked here. Fancy Man in the Magnolia Stakes, Chinned It in the Donny Mile, and Life is Good in the Dubai World Cup, who's definitely break and gone. But I'll leave those. The next best comes at Kempton, the 430 at Kempton, in fact, and it's a horse called War in Heaven, trained by Andrew Balding. Son of Exceeding Excel, last year looked really babyish in 2 starts. Like some of Andrew Balding's juveniles can be, they take some time to, mature physically and mentally. It looks like War in Heaven has done that this winter on the all-weather. He's won 2 6-furlong events at Lingfield. He's looked very green round in the home bend and kind of only found his full stride in the final 100, 110 yards. I think the return, the switch, to Kempton with a longer straight, the step up to 7 furlongs will suit him. He looks really well handicapped with a mark of 78. He's my next best. War in Heaven in the 430 at Kempton.
Okay, interesting. Look forward to seeing him. For myself, my nap is going to come in Diligent Harry. I think he's going to be shorter than 11 to 4 come Saturday for the Cammidge Trophy. He's got a big season ahead of him. Let's hope he gets off to a good start on Saturday. I am also going to put up a next best with Papa Stour. We talked about young apprentices. Lorenzo Azzurri has not had a huge amount of winners for Stuart Williams. He's got a big opportunity with Marco Gianni at Doncaster. He'll be on Papa Stour at Kempton in the 355. I think this horse was unlucky last time out at Lingfield, but has racked up a good few wins at Kempton beforehand, back at his favourite track. And I think that he represents a bit of value. I think you can get around 10 to 1. So plenty of racing on Saturday. So for new customers who are listening to the podcast for the first time, are yet a member of SBK, you can deposit £10 and you'll get £30 in free bets. So plenty to play with for this weekend. And we hope that we have offered you a few good insights and good few tips for the beginning of the flat turf season. And so thanks to James, to Tom, to Ross. Enjoy this weekend as ever. Like, subscribe to the podcast. We're back every week. And we look forward to seeing you this time next week.